Hello, my name is Hernandez, and in 1776, our founding fathers signed this document. The Declaration of Independence is considered to many as the first step in the great experiment of democracy in the Americas. However, 11 years later, the great experiment of democracy failed the United States after the crumbling of the Articles of Confederation. What occurred next was a division between two factions. One, the anti federalists who wanted to adjust the Articles of Confederation, against the second option, who were the Federalists, who wanted to establish a new US Constitution. The US Constitution that we have today was the one that was implemented by the Federalists, but it's also an example of how compromise worked in the creation of our government. Let's start with the Federalists. The Federalists came from large cities. They represented large areas like Boston, New York, and Philadelphia, and were in charge of creating a US Constitution that made a federalist system, which would put the federal government over the state governments. Now, James Madison, who wrote under the title of Plebeius and Federalist 10 in 1787, wrote that having a large republic would ensure that the minorities could have an opinion, as there'd be so many factions competing for attention that the minority could get away with it. This use of writing and making essays to plead to the masses was not only common to Madison, but to the rest of the Federalist faction and even the Anti Federalists. The Anti Federalists were from rural areas, areas that were primarily agricultural based, and were represented mostly by Patrick Henry. In the anti-federalist section, there was two camps. There was the camp that wanted to make sure that the Constitution didn't go through because they believed that the government would be too powerful. And there was also the camp who just wanted to make sure that the Articles of Confederations were just slightly tweaked. Brutus, who was the pseudonym of an anti-federalist, wrote Brutus number one in 1788. And in this, he wrote that a large republic would not only hurt representation, but it would hurt the rights of the states and the individual and would lead to eventual tyranny. This all came to a head in 1788 with the Constitutional Convention, where the Federalists managed to convince the Anti Federalists to sign their Constitution, but with one caveat. The Anti Federalists forced the Federalists to add a list of 10 amendments, which would be called the Bill of Rights, after the ratification. And Roberta Shanahan, who is an ACLU board member, wrote in her 2021 piece, The Bill of Rights, the essential rights without which liberty cannot exist, that having these rights enshrined for the state and the individual ensured that the new federal government cannot meddle with those rights. Now, you might be wondering, this argument and all these political tension would create a lot of turmoil in the US, and it's true. But at the end of the day, argument and compromise is what made this beautiful constitution. And without each one of their roles, we would not have the constitution that we have today. So when you're looking at arguments that are going on today with political issues, just remember that the only reason that we got results from the great experiment that is called the United States is because of compromise. Thank you very much. Yeah, we're good.